Hey there and welcome to the channel. My name is Factor from beatacademy.com, and in this video, I want to share with you some music production tips and techniques while I recreate the beat in Taylor Swift's Anti-Hero. Now, I love doing these breakdowns because I learn something new every time I'm recreating a track from a popular artist. There's certain things that I learn and pick up that I then implement and use in my day-to-day projects. And so I hope that you get to do the same thing. So stay tuned to the end because at the end of this video, I'm also going to be sharing a useful tool that you can use in your projects. And it's a special gift for you. So hang tight to the end of this video. So let's dive right in. Let me show you my recreation of Taylor Swift's Anti-Hero. Now, at times it might feel like, hey, here's a popular song, let me break it down. But the goal here is really to extract some of the really cool, unique textures and techniques that I tend to pick up in recreating this that I then get to share it with you. So hopefully that's what you get from here. And I'm not trying to pinpoint the exact patch or preset that the producer and artist use in their songs, because then that would just be like, hey, just use this preset, use that, and then you're good to go. But in learning how to recreate these sounds, I think you can then be better equipped with how to get close to the sound that you're looking for in your projects. So if that benefits you, and if you think this is really helpful for you, then be sure to like and subscribe this video and click the link below in the description box so you can get more resources that'll help you move forward with your music production. Now, at the very beginning of this record, the drums are doing a really cool almost has this gated effect to it, but there's a low hum to it. And it's got this really nice, warm, tape saturated, vintage type of vibe. So that's the mindset I'm going into when trying to recreate the drums or recapture that same type of feel and vibe. And remember, that's what we're going for here throughout this video. Not necessarily to get the same exact sound, but how would you match or get close to recreating that similar vibe that you are also looking for to implement in your project. So for me, I want to make sure I've got a Ableton Live drum rack loaded with some sounds that I'm liking. So I've got my kick, a snare, and a ride cymbal that I'm going to be using in the chorus. Now, to warm up these sounds, I'm going to go to each of those sounds in the drum rack and enable the filter. And we're going to just bring down the filter a little bit, the filter cutoff. And this is going to eliminate some of the high end, warming up that snare drum sound. And so make sure that the filter is set to low pass, just letting the lows pass. And I'm going to also do the same thing to the kick drum as well. Just helps warm them up. And that's really a unique trick that you can do is just apply a little bit of filtering to your drums. And the less high end, the more further back it feels, but also the warmer that sound tends to get. Now, I have an overdrive plugin by Ableton Live directly on the drum rack. So that's going to be affecting the ride, the kick, and the snare. And the overdrive just does a great job of bringing up the grit and also highlights some details that of the attack of both the kick and the snare. And now, what I want to do to create that gated type effect is I'm actually going to be duplicating this drum rack. I'm going to copy the same drum rack, and you can see that right here. But what I've done is I now have the same overdrive, but I added a reverb directly on that. And that's just going to, and I'm really driving the wet really hard there, about 68%. So we're getting mostly the wet reverb effect sound of the drums. And then what I have is a track next to that with just a simple hi-hat loop. And this is from a vintage drum machine loop here. As you can see, I've chopped it up just to kind of mirror the same drum pattern as my drum rack. Now, what we want to do is with the reverb drums and this new hi-hat loop, I'm going to go ahead and group them. So hold Shift and Ableton Live and hit Command G to group them. And what I'm going to be doing is let's use the RC20 color plugin by Excellent Audio. And we're going to be using our auto pan to kind of create that gate effect that we can hear, and then use that as almost a parallel processing uh, group along with our main drums. So under the noise section here with the RC20, I'm going to make sure that I have it set to the tape 7.5, and that creates this nice little low hum. And I'm going to increase the wobble, distort it to add the grit, add a little space, and the magnetic. But this is really just to help bring out that color. But then to create the gated effect, I'm going to be using the Auto Pan plugin from Ableton Live. This is where it gets really cool. Now here, by default, we have the phase set to 180, which will usually treat this as a device to pan your sound from left to right. And it's going to go back and forth depending on your rate. But if I bring the phase all the way down, then it no longer pans left to right, and it just simply controls the volume. So having the rate set to every 16th note and just messing with the offset so I can catch the right timing of the fluctuations helps me kind of find the sweet spot for this. So now that I have the auto pan set this way, it's going to be gating or causing this almost this, you know, volume envelope tool to the drums. And the reason why I put the drum rack with the reverb is that you're getting more the atmospheric space and the acoustic spacing rather than the direct sound. And so that's really cool in creating that type of effect. And then an EQ to really take away some of the low end and the higher end to warm this up. And now let's put that with our main foreground beat. All right, let's focus in on the bass. Now, you can follow along using any 2 or more oscillator synth that you have in your DAW. In this case, I'm going to be using Ableton Live's wavetable, and I've got these 2 oscillators set to a sawtooth. Now, why the sawtooth? Because it's going to help us give us that nice chorusy and wide bass that we oftentimes hear in a lot of throwback 80s, retro wave and synth wave type stuff. And that's kind of what I'm hearing from the reference track. So that's where I'm starting with the sawtooth. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring the cutoff down so that we can get a lot of the brighter side of the notes. And I also want to make sure that I'm taking one oscillator and setting that a whole octave lower. So this second oscillator is set to 12 semitones down. I'm also detuning this a little bit, giving a slight detune here and widening that up. And oscillator 1 is set to normal octave. And then we're going to go ahead to the matrix and route the cutoff frequency over to envelope 2. So mapping that cutoff frequency to the envelope helps kind of open that filter up and accent certain parts of the bass line, adding a little bit of filter drive and bringing the resonance up. And important to set this from polyphonic to monophonic so that the notes don't overlap with one another. And we're just going to unison, we're going to enable the unison here, set it to classic, 4 voices, so we're doubling up on the voices here, and just give a little bit of that. I'm giving just a hair of that because I might want to add a chorus and see what texture the chorus plugin adds. And I'll just A/B. I'll go back whether I'll crank more of this or just enable more of or dry and wet of the chorus plugin. Right now, let's add some saturation. So I'm using the dynamic tube, adding some tube saturation here, and an EQ to just roll off some of the low end. Now, this is a bass line. Why would I want to roll off the low end? Well, the purpose for me doing this is so that I can have this bass line really focus more on the mid-range and be present on maybe smaller systems such as a laptop or Bluetooth speakers, and yet have another bass line duplicating the same exact parts, but that one's going to be focused on the sub frequencies. So I can have a little bit more tonal balance and control over the amount of the low end rather than, widening up the low end here by placing chorus effects and things like that. So this bass line is going to be wide and more mid-rangey, and then just having the sub focus more in the center. So here's that chorus effect here by Ableton Live. So that's what we have for that. And here is the other bass line, which I just duplicated. So we have the wavetable set to one oscillator set to a sine wave and just bring in a whole octave lower. Cutoff frequency down because we really don't need anything higher than 600 hertz. Also set to mono. And I've just got a compressor on here just to control the overall dynamics. So certain notes in the lower register that might resonate more than others, it'll be controlled with this compressor. Then using an amp plugin here to add some more bottom end beef and saturation, and a saturator here with the soft clip on. So I'm giving almost 3 dB drive, and I'm just kind of balancing it back here. And then a sidechain compressor from the kick drum, just so that the kick kind of is more dominant. So this is the drums and the bass together. So you can hear that low hum is getting really muddy here. So I'm just going to use this EQ to... All right, let's work on some of the keys and pads. So for the pads, I wanted to create a nice lush bed that really supports the drums and the bass and all the vocals that we hear in the reference track. So for this, I'm going to be using the wavetable again, 2 oscillators. And as I'm listening to it, we've got the bass line using a sawtooth, so it's got that, that buzz to it. I'm also going to be using a sawtooth for the pads, but we're going to soften them up by using and changing the amp envelope so it's not really abrasive. And we're going to have a reverb that's going to create the nice space and give it the atmosphere that we want. So oscillator 1 set to a sawtooth, oscillator 2 also to a sawtooth, but let's take this a whole octave higher. And this really brings some shimmer or some shine to the sound. Now I'm also making sure that the cutoff frequency is set so we don't have it too bright. So let's bring the cutoff down. It warms up the sound. And here's that amp envelope. I've got the attack a little bit slow here. This is with it all the way. So bringing it back down. And just bringing the classic unison up. 3 voices and a little bit of that. So it's pretty straightforward, but what really adds the life and space is the reverb directly inserted onto the sound. So I'm using the hybrid reverb from Ableton Live, and I have it set to the shimmer algorithm here so that we can add a whole nother octave by increasing the shimmer knob. And we're really just trying to balance a little bit where we get a lot of the space, but yet the pads. The more reverb you place on something, the farther away it becomes in the mix. So if I totally drench this, it'll get lost, but I don't want it to be so upfront as well. So let's just find a happy medium here. That does a great job of doing that as well. And then we have an EQ here just to remove a little bit low end and some of the low mids. So then I'm duplicating the same exact track. So I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate that. And as you can see here, same wavetable, same reverb, but we're taking the exact auto pan that I used on the drums. I copied and pasted that right onto these pads here. And this is going to create that gated effect on the pads as well. Such a cool effect. I love using gated pads. I think they do such a great job of adding that subtle rhythmic pulse to things. And it's really nice to just add. You can even add gated pads and gated synths in the background that just create this sense of movement. And so this is a great way of doing that. So I've got the auto pan creating that. And then I have a flanger directly on there so that the actual movement of the pads is not just, moving rhythmically, but we're sonically creating that movement as well. Now I'm also sending, as you can see here, I have return tracks A, B, and C in Ableton Live, and I'm sending a lot of, all of the gated pads to B. And what I have on B here is an EQ to take out any low end and a big room reverb here with Ableton Live, but I'm also got a utility plugin at the end of the reverb plugin, and I'm increasing the stereo width here. And so I'm making sure that the reverb presence is getting a little bit wider than usual. So the reason why I'm also sending the drums to that is because I wanted the room or the drum room sound to feel wide, and this gives a sense of width to the overall mix. So if you're struggling with like, man, why can't I get my stuff to really just sound wide? You can also work on expanding the width of your return tracks as well. So that's one thing that you can implement in your projects. So now that we've got the gated pad, I'm gonna add one layer of a sound, and this is maybe just a high string part. And this is just a great way where you have a tonal presence. So I've got one note going all the way through, sustaining, and that one note, the absolute note that's there, when it sustains against a moving chord progression, what tends to happen is it causes this really sweet relationship between those two elements that just does something really special to the overall blend. So for this, I'm using the Selena V2 from Arturia. It's just a great string uh, synth instrument that I have here, and it's literally just one note being held throughout this whole progression. But as you can see, once we have these two playing together, it helps just glue them together. So now let's see what it does with everybody in. So the big takeaway for me was using the auto pan as a gate for some of the reverb drums and the pads that we use to kind of blend them all together and create this sense of pulse and movement throughout the track. Now, as a gift to you for watching this video, I'd love to send you this Ableton Live session so you can follow along, as well as many other Ableton Live sessions from many of the videos on this channel. So if you're new to this channel, definitely explore the videos we have here, like and subscribe so you can stay up to date. But you can access this as well as a sample pack loaded with construction kits, loops, sounds that are 100% royalty free that you can use in your projects. So to access all this, simply click the link below in the description box or visit beatacademy.com/pack and download this today. Now, if you're serious about producing music or you're looking for professional guidance to help you take your next step with your music production, I want to encourage you to visit beatacademy.com. This is where I've been spending a lot of my time in mentoring others who have been wanting to take their next step forward with their music. And I've been doing it through the form of providing resources, courses that walk through every aspect of not just music production, but how do you develop and build a career from your music. Also, I've provided a community of like minded individuals who come alongside and encourage and help you, collaborate with you in getting the music that you want to create. And so there are many mentorship opportunities throughout Beat Academy. So if you're looking for that next step, then I definitely want to direct your attention to visiting beatacademy.com and become a Beat Academy member today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.